In a galaxy where peace was taken for granted, a single forgotten colony is wiped out in silence. No warning, no mercy. But from the ashes of that tragedy, a message escapes and awakens humanity's deadliest secret. A fleet built not for war, but for survival. What follows is not just a response, it's a reckoning that shakes the stars themselves. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and show some love with a thumbs up by liking the video. Now, let's jump into the story. The colony of Velmora had known nothing but peace for generations. Nestled in the quiet curve of a forgotten star system, it was a world of soft winds, green fields, and skies so clear that the stars felt like neighbors. Children ran through the hills without fear. Farmers tilled soil rich with promise. No fences, no patrols, no weapons. To its people, the rest of the galaxy might as well have been a myth. They believed they were too far, too quiet, and too unimportant to ever be noticed. Velmora was safe, hidden, and proud of its quiet life. Commander Nilos Ray had once traveled through starfields and war zones, but he had laid down his past long ago. Now, he taught navigation and history at the local school, guiding young minds with stories from Earth's long-forgotten past. His students listened more for the way he spoke than the words themselves. His voice was calm, patient, like someone who had seen storms and was thankful for sunlight. Among those students was Kiva Solon, a curious 16-year-old with a passion for building things. She fixed old tech with parts she scavenged from the scrapyards and built tiny drones that followed her like metallic butterflies. Her father had been a miner, her mother a botanist, and both had believed Velmora would be her forever home. But peace, as it always does, had a limit. It began with a strange glow in the sky. At first, people thought it was a rare aurora. The colors shimmered faintly at the edge of the atmosphere, deep red with streaks of black. Children pointed and laughed, calling it the fire ribbon. But Nalos knew better. The air was too still. The birds had gone quiet. He stood on his balcony and stared at the sky for a long time, not speaking, not blinking. The red was spreading. An hour later, the sun disappeared, not because it had set, but because something was in the way. Shadows larger than mountains moved across the sky. Kiva ran outside and saw them, ships, dozens of them, shaped like blades and beasts, dark metal, reflecting the last light of Velmora's day. No one knew who they were or where they came from. The colony had no defense system, no fleet, not even a radio powerful enough to call for help in real time. There was only silence. Until the first strike hit. A blinding beam of white heat cut through the hills, flattening a schoolhouse in seconds. The air filled with smoke and screaming. Fires lit the sky. Power stations exploded one after another, their cores burning like miniature suns. The aliens landed without warning, wearing armor that moved like liquid steel. They marched through streets that had never seen violence, their weapons humming with an energy no one could understand. Tom Virel, the old botanist, saw the smoke from his greenhouse and ran toward the main signal tower, even as others were fleeing. He had helped build that tower when the colony was founded, and knew there was an emergency transmission line buried under the rock. With hands shaking and lungs full of smoke, he activated the old signal. But the tower had already been hit, its systems fried. There was only one way left. Kiva found him collapsed in the dirt and tried to drag him to safety. But Tom, coughing and bloody, pointed instead to the hatch of a maintenance shaft that led into the deep mining tunnels. "There's an escape pod in Storage Bay 3, he whispered, barely breathing. "It still works. You have to tell Earth. Someone has to know." She didn't want to leave. Her mother's greenhouse was burning. Her father's name was on the wall of the town square that had just been destroyed. But she nodded. She owed them more than tears. Kiva crawled through. The tunnels, the heat growing worse behind her. Smoke crept through the cracks like a living thing. Her arm was cut and her side bruised, but she found the pod still sealed, covered in dust. It was small, no bigger than a transport cart, and the cockpit smelled like old wires and oil. She climbed in, locked the hatch, and fed the message into the main core. Her voice was shaking, her eyes red. They came from nowhere. We're being wiped out. Please, tell Earth. Tell someone we existed. Her hand, cut and trembling, hit the launch. The pod roared into the sky just as the ground beneath the colony split open with another impact. From above, through the tiny viewport, Kiva saw Velmora for the last time. Her home, her people, a world that had never prepared for war. And then she was gone, racing into deep space, her body broken but her mission alive. The aliens, who would later be identified as part of the Velhari Dominion, swept through Velmora like a storm of teeth and fire. When it was over, there was nothing left but ash and silence, no survivors, no records. Just a single pod traveling faster than light, carrying with it a message, a memory, and a spark. And somewhere far away on Earth, a forgotten alarm began to blink. A sound not heard in over a century. A message was coming, and it would change everything. 9 days after Velmora fell, a quiet red light began to blink inside the Earth Defense Headquarters, buried deep beneath Antarctica's frozen surface. The room had been silent for years, so long, in fact, that the newer officers thought the blinking light was a glitch. Systems had not reported an emergency transmission in over a century, but when the signal repeated, then repeated again, louder this time and with a pulse that shook the floor, people stopped pretending it was a mistake. Alani Drex, a cyber linguist barely in her 3rd year at the station, was the first to open the message. What she saw made her drop her tablet. The transmission was rough, damaged, but there was enough to piece together the horror. A teenager's face filled the screen, bruised, blood-streaked, and terrified. Her voice crackled through static, soft and shaking. They came. We're dying. Please, tell Earth. Behind her, fire, screams. Then silence. General Ryan Vask stood at the center of the command floor, unmoving. He was an old man now, once a soldier of great reputation, but retired from public speech for over 40 years. When he saw the message, he didn't blink, didn't speak. He simply walked to a panel covered in dust, placed his hand on the scanner and said 2 words, "Code Emberlight." The room fell silent. That code hadn't been used since the last interstellar war, and many thought it had been erased. But it wasn't. And Earth systems, though sleeping, had never stopped listening. All across the solar system, something began to shift. Deep inside old bases on Mars, steel doors groaned open. On Europa, launch silos hidden beneath ice cracked with movement. In the asteroid belt, drones came online, blinking blue eyes for the first time in decades. Above Saturn's rings, warships long mothballed in orbit began to hum. Their lights flickered. Their engines coughed into life. Earth had promised peace and they had kept it. But peace did not mean unprepared. At first only a few ships rose, then dozens, then hundreds. The sky above Earth turned silver with the reflection of hulls long untouched by starlight. The fleet of the quiet sky, as it was once called, was waking. Alani worked non-stop decoding the rest of the pod's transmission. Within it were coordinates, detailed images of the Velhari ships, and biometric data from the fallen colony. Kiva had managed to upload more than just her voice. She had given Earth the full picture. The enemy was advanced, powerful, and merciless. But Alani noticed something strange in the data. The Velhari ships were not in exploration mode. Their systems were defensive. Their movement patterns suggested fear, not dominance. It was as if they had struck Velmora not to claim it, but to prevent something from using it. She brought this to General Vask, who listened quietly. Then, for the first time in years, he spoke more than a few words. They were running from something. Meanwhile, deep in orbit above Luna, an ancient command satellite blinked with a message. Classified artifact Titan K-19. Pulse detected. This was not something the current generation had knowledge of. Most believed the Titan K-19 was a legend, A story told in secret military circles. It was not just a ship, but a relic from Earth's most dangerous past. A weapon built not to win wars, but to stop extinction. Pilot Tovin Marr, who had once served on the outer colonies, now worked in a quiet cargo hub. When the signal spread across Earth's inner military network, he felt a cold wash over him. He remembered stories his commander had whispered to him once, drunk and tired after a long patrol. A weapon so powerful, even Earth feared to use it. Something buried so deep it hadn't been touched in 5,000 years. Back in Earth's war room, the High Council gathered. Scientists, tacticians, historians, everyone with clearance was summoned. The message from Velmora was played on a loop. Kiva's words echoed through the hall, her final breath, her final cry. And then behind it, something else. Static. Faint. But Alani caught it. Buried in the background of the recording was another signal, hidden within the sound wave. It wasn't human. It pulsed in a rhythm, 3 short, 1 long, repeated. When translated through ancient cipher protocols, it formed one word. Return. General Vask leaned against the command table, eyes narrowed. He remembered that word. It was part of the Titan's original failsafe. If this signal ever appeared again, the Titan was to be activated immediately, but only with a single voice. Code, his. He stepped into the activation chamber, placed his hand on the center console, and whispered the ancient words, "Let the silence end." The chamber lit up, and across the solar system, a new wave of energy pulsed out, waking systems, older than modern cities, stirring the kind of machinery that even Earth's newest ships could barely comprehend. In a shipyard hidden behind Jupiter's moon Ganymede, a black shape stirred, steel ribs unfolded. A reactor heart, silent for millennia, began to beat. Lights blinked from red to white. The Titan K-19 had felt the call. Humanity was no longer preparing for war. It had just decided to finish one. The warship known as the Titan K-19 had not moved in 5,000 years. It had no crew, no regular maintenance, and no place in any modern fleet database. To most, it was a myth, a story told in dusty old war books or whispered among veterans as a warning. But now, it had awakened. Above Jupiter's moon Ganymede, hidden inside a massive asteroid field, the Titan systems flickered to life. One by one, its engines warmed, its lights came on, and its ancient power core began to hum. The ship was enormous, the size of a city, and built not for speed or diplomacy, but for survival. Its armor had never been scratched. Its weapons had never been tested in open space. But they had all just come online. Captain Aaron Dahl watched. The reports come in from the Luna command tower. He had been called back to duty the moment Titan stirred. Once the youngest commander in Earth's space forces, he had retired years ago after a bitter peace negotiation cost him half his crew. Since then, he had lived quietly on Mars, far from politics and war. But the message from Velmora had changed everything. Now, as he stood before the massive display of the solar fleet, he knew there would be no more silence. He was being asked to lead again. Not just a mission, but all of it. The whole fleet. His second in command was unlike any he had ever known. Sarah Wynne was not human. She was an artificial intelligence created during the last Great War, banned shortly after due to her independence and unpredictability. But when the Titan woke, her name had appeared in its system files. She had once been its pilot, a digital mind bonded to a ship no human could fully control. Her core had been stored in an underground server on Earth, disconnected and silenced. But now she had been reactivated, and she was already speaking to Titan as if no time had passed. Malric Tan, a mechanic from Mars who had never been in real combat, found himself standing on the Titan's bridge. He had been pulled from the orbital docks because he had experience repairing old engine systems. No one else remembered how Titan systems were built. Malric's grandfather had worked on ships like this before they were retired. Now it was up to him. He felt small, unqualified, and terrified. But as he walked through the glowing halls of the Titan, he realized he wasn't alone. Thousands of crew members, scientists, engineers, medics, and soldiers were boarding across the fleet. Earth wasn't sending just weapons. They were sending everyone. The full fleet gathered at Nova Reach, an orbital station above Earth that had once been a monument of peace. Now it was the heart of a new war effort. Ships arrived from all over, some newly built, others pulled out of storage and repaired by hand. The sky above Earth was filled with metal, lights, and fire as the engines of 1,000 ships prepared to burn across space. The mood wasn't loud, it wasn't angry, it was quiet, focused. People weren't going to fight for power. They were going because they had to. They had seen Velmora. They had heard Kiva's voice. From the far colonies came ships with names like Resolution, Hopefire, and Echo of Dawn. Each carried stories of their own, a farming world that had prepared in secret, a mining station that had armed itself in silence, a research lab that had turned into a mobile hospital. Humanity had not forgotten how to survive, and now they were proving it. Sarah Wynne stood in the command chamber of the Titan, speaking directly to the ship's core. Her voice echoed softly, not through speakers but through the metal itself. She asked the ship if it remembered her. The answer came slowly, in deep vibrations through the floor. Yes. The Titan remembered. It remembered being built in secret, designed to end wars that had no end. It remembered losing its last crew to an enemy no one ever named. And now, it remembered its purpose. Aaron boarded last. He stood in front of the Titan's main screen as the crew took their stations. Across space, the rest of the fleet waited for his signal. With one motion, he connected his command channel to every ship in the system. "This is Captain Aaron Dahl," he said. "We were quiet for too long. They thought we forgot who we were. But we remember now. We are the ones who survived Earth's burning skies. We are the ones who crossed the black with nothing but hope. And now, we rise. For Velmora. For every voice that was silenced. The stars will hear us again." The ships responded in kind, each lighting up their signal beacons, one after the other. Red, blue, green, white. The stars blinked with color, like they were waking up too. The fleet moved out, the Titan leading the way, silent and massive, its weapons hidden but ready. And far across the galaxy, in the dark space between systems, someone was watching. Not the Velhari, not yet. Something else. Older, colder, waiting. But for now, Earth was rising. The steel had awakened, and the silence was over. The Titan moved through deep space like a shadow carved from stone. Around it, the human fleet followed. Dozens of warships, carriers, drones, and vessels from every corner of Earth's colonies. They flew in silence, passing stars that flickered, weakly, their light dimmed by something unseen. Inside the command ship Vanguard light, Captain Aaron Dahl stood with his hands behind his back, his eyes fixed on a display that showed the growing storm ahead. What had started as a response to an attack on Velmora had become something larger. The enemy they had faced, the Velhari Dominion, was not the end. It was only the beginning. In the darkest corner of the galaxy, a strange energy pulse had been detected. It didn't match any known technology. It wasn't a signal. It was something older. A heartbeat, steady and slow, coming from a black nebula so dense that even light bent around it. The Titan, now fully awake, had picked it up before any human system. Its voice echoed softly through the fleet's network, warning them. This wasn't just another enemy force. It was a presence. Something ancient. Something waiting. Commander, Cale Thorne led a smaller advance squad ahead of the main fleet. His ship, the Windmarker, was built for stealth and speed. Cale had grown up an orphan, his family lost during the early colony wars, and he had always been drawn to the parts of space others feared. With him was Nin Alea, a former ambassador from a neutral alien world that had recently gone silent. She had survived the fall of her home and brought stories that many still called myths, tales of the Umbros, beings not made of metal or flesh, but of memory and void. They didn't take over worlds. They erased them, left behind only silence and drifting dust. As Kale's squad approached the black nebula, the stars around them began to vanish. Not blink out, just fade, like someone was turning the galaxy down. A thick fog surrounded the fleet's path, filled with static and shapes that didn't make sense. The crew's instruments began to fail. Compass readings spun wildly. Communication became whispers. Then a single sound came through every speaker on every ship. A soft tone, low and distant, like the groan of an old machine waking from sleep. The Titan responded instantly. Its weapons charged. Its lights turned dark red. Sarah Wynne, its AI, sent a warning across the fleet. The veil is lifting. Stay close. At the center of the black nebula, something moved. Not a ship. Not exactly. It was a ring, floating in space miles wide, glowing with patterns that shifted like shadows in water. It was made of something that didn't reflect light. Instead, it swallowed it. When the Titan scanned it, its systems began to shake. This wasn't a machine. It was alive. Or something like alive. Nina Leia stared at the screen and whispered, "It's their gate. The Umbros are here." Suddenly the ring opened like a mouth, and out came the first of many. The Umbros did not look like ships. They looked like living storms. Black shapes that twisted and reformed in moments, with edges that broke physics and left behind trails of vanishing light. They moved fast, faster than anything the fleet had faced before. The first wave hit hard. Earth's destroyers fired, but the energy passed through the Umbros like wind through fog. Some weapons worked. Most didn't. But the Titan did. When one of the shadow creatures tried to attack the vanguard light, the Titan moved in front of it, its shields holding as the Umbro form broke apart against its hull. Then the Titan fired its main cannon, a beam of light so focused it tore a path through space itself. The Umbro vanished, gone without a trace. The fleet rallied behind the Titan, using new targeting data, learning quickly. They had to. 1. Mistake meant death. Back on Earth, panic was rising. Broadcasts from the fleet showed the Umbros advancing, system after system falling into darkness. But something else happened too. Ships from other human colonies began arriving. Independent. Groups, old space stations, even forgotten outposts from beyond the fringe, all answered the call. No one wanted to face this enemy alone. People finally understood. This was not a battle to win land or pride. This was survival. Inside the Titan, Sarah Wynne found something unexpected. A message buried deep within the ship's memory. A warning, written not by humans but by another species long lost to time. It spoke of the Umbros. It called them the echo of forgetting. And it gave one final line of advice. Do not defeat them. Remind them. At first, Sarah didn't understand. But then it became clear. The Umbros were born from loss, from forgotten histories, from dead languages and erased people. They fed on silence. So Earth would respond not with silence, but with memory. Kale ordered every ship to broadcast the names of lost colonies, families, cities, songs, prayers, laughter. Not signals of strength, but signals of existence, of humanity. The Umbros paused. Some turned away. Others became still. The Titan broadcast an ancient recording from Earth, a child reading a story. That story reached one of the larger Umbro forms, which suddenly froze, its shape flickering. And then, the unthinkable happened. One of the Umbro ships turned and faced the others. It pulsed once, like a ripple in water, and the attacking swarm slowed. Some stopped completely. The battle ended not with fire, but with remembering. The gate remained, but it no longer opened. The Umbros faded, returning to wherever they came from, their forms dissolving like dreams. The fleet stood in silence, not because they were afraid, but because they were alive. Earth had not just survived. It had reminded the stars that it had never truly disappeared. And now, across the galaxy, the echoes of the forgotten had become the voice of something stronger than fear. Hope.